Hi everybody, Bearded Rogue here, and we're continuing our unboxing in Oregon series, this time with box 20. Box 20 is the only medium-sized box, moving box in this whole set. Under the advice of several people who've moved large board game collections, some of which were larger than mine, I packed everything in in small size moving boxes. There were a couple of advantages to this. One, made them not very heavy, made them much easier to move. Two, the small size boxes are cheaper. And three, a fully packed small size box fits right into the holes on a Kallax shelf. At least the Home Depot brand small size boxes. So I was able to pack all my games up in the small size boxes, slot them into the holes in my Kallax shelving unit that I had in my moving crate, and it kept them extremely well protected from any kind of harm. The board game boxes didn't move at all because they were inside the Kallax. I have a 5x5, so I didn't even use all of the spaces. Some of the more valuable other things from the house, like kitchenware and bathroom stuff, ended up being put in the remaining spaces in my Kallax in small moving boxes as well. So that's just something to keep in mind. But let's get to box 20. Box 20 is the only medium-sized box, and it only exists because there were some games I had that were just too big physically to fit inside of a small-size moving box. There's a couple of other things in here to kind of pad it out. We won't go over those. We're only going to go over the games. Let's go ahead and get started. So, the first one is one that Stephanie Straw is going to be very happy to see that I have in my collection, and that's Mastermind. Mastermind is a game that both my wife and I grew up with. We didn't play it together. We didn't know each other when we were growing up, but it's a game that was pretty popular with people our age, and it's a logic game. One player picks a code and programs it in with their pegs. Another player uses other pegs to try to guess what the code is and are told how many they have right, how many they have wrong, how many they have right in the correct position, etc., etc., and you're trying to use your limited number of guesses to guess what the code is. It's a pretty simple game for most adults, but it teaches logic, and it teaches logical pattern thinking, and it's really good for kids, and it's something that I played when I was really young, and really enjoyed. It's something my wife loves and really enjoys, and so it has a place on our shelves, particularly because sooner rather than later we're going to be able to play with my son, and hopefully he'll get as much out of it as we did, but yeah, it's more than earned its space in my collection as a really solid game. And let's move on. Next is one of those games that, as I mentioned, was way too big to fit into one of these boxes, and that's my collector's edition Tokaido. This one is a huge box. It does not fit inside of a Kallax in any way that you do it, even tilted on its diagonal axis. It won't fit inside of a Kallax shelf. That's fine. It can sit on top, but it made packing it much more difficult than I had hoped it would be. As such, it's one of the games that necessitated that I have a medium-sized box, because it's so large. Tokaido's a really great game. I think I mentioned it in my last video when talking about Kraftwagen. Tokaido can be a calm, peaceful stroll through the Japanese countryside, or it can be a knife fight in a phone booth as everybody goes after exactly what you wanted and takes it out from underneath you, and you have to compromise, and then you start you start going to the places they need to go out of the hatred that they've raised in you, overtaking the spot that obviously you were going to, and then you start playing non-obvious strategies, even though your character specifically rewards you for playing the obvious one, etc., etc. So there can be multiple layers to it. You can either choose to just sit down and play a fun little point collection game with friends, or you can be all out at each other's throats. And I really like that about it. It's an Antoine Bauza game. He seems to design impossibly hard co-op games like Ghost Stories and Samurai Spirit, and really laid-back competitive games like Takanoko and Tokaido. And trust me, it can be played as a really laid-back, chill game. It's a really good game to sit down to with a drink, I think, for adults. And yeah, it earned its place in my collection, not to mention that the version that I have has fully painted minis and metal coins and all the expansions included and all of that other good stuff. So it's a luxury item in and of itself. Next is Catacombs. Catacombs is one of those unique gems that comes along that totally catches everybody by surprise. This is the second edition of Catacombs, with the amazing Quan Chai Mariah art added. The first edition of Catacombs was Uglier Than Sin. It is in the running for ugliest game ever produced by anyone ever. And still, it got over with the board game audience, because it is a genius mashup of dexterity game and dungeon crawl that is unlike anything else on the planet. Other dexterity games that use flicking are primarily dexterity games. They aren't trying to do anything else on top of that. This game combines flicking with dungeon crawl in a very, very satisfying way. It's, like I said, it's completely unique. The Quan Chai Mariah artwork takes it over the top as far as how much better it looks now. It's a game that has a amazing table presence. Everybody will want to know what you're playing. I've seen people who don't like dungeon crawls, who are only into dexterity games, come over and give it a try and fall in love. I've seen people who hate dexterity games give it a try and fall in love. It's just this totally unique game that's unlike anything else out there, and I had to have it in my collection, and that's why it's still here, and why I went ahead and found a larger than small size box to house it in, because it also doesn't fit into a small size box or in a calyx. Both of those games sit on top for now. Let's see, next game. Next game is an oldie but goodie, in my opinion, and that is Risk 2210 AD. Risk 2210 AD is crazy. It's Risk, but with the addition of the moon and underwater colonies and nuclear wastelands that are completely unpassable, and different commanders for your army that all behave differently depending on where they're attacking from. It introduces those funny-sided D&D dice into Risk rather than just using D6s. It's a totally unique experience. If you don't like Risk, you won't like it. If you do like Risk, you might like it. I think a lot of the prototype ideas for things in Legacy were in 22 AD as mechanics that were being tested out. I think that the wonderful Mr. Rob Davio was associated with this one, but of course, like all games from the major companies, in this case Avalon Hill, who at the time was owned by Wizards of the Coast already, they don't really list the designers and everything outside the box. I'm going to look here real quick to see if it mentions a lead designer of any kind. I don't think it will. I think it just jumps right into the freaking rules and doesn't mention anyone who built it. It contains the classic Risk rules inside of it if you want to just use it as regular Risk with funny pieces that you don't actually use. Yeah, it doesn't actually credit anyone inside of it, which is a shame. I think Rob was involved, I don't know for sure, but it was the first, like, special version of Risk. There were a couple others that were made after it, like Risk Godstorm was one, and a couple of other things. They sold pretty well. They were much more intricate, heavier games than Risk, but maintained the dice rolling dudes on a map aspect of Risk that people were used to. I've seen people get into fistfights over that game, so it's not one that I play much anymore, but it's one that's really hard to find now, and I have a lot of also fond memories of it outside of fistfights that are really big deal to me. Next, we have a copy of Othello. Othello is a fun little abstract game. This is a really nice version of it. The tiles are double-sided plastic, or the chips are double-sided plastic, and it's a felt-lined board. Yeah, it's a really good version of Othello. If you haven't played Othello, I recommend Othello. It's a very, I'm not going to say it's a very basic version of Go, but it is an abstract game that kind of purports to involve some of the strategies of Go and surrounding other people's pieces. It's not a very, it's not as in-depth as those kinds of games, so it can be played with younger people or people who don't play it as a lifestyle game. Either way, it's a fun little abstract game, something to pull out like chess or checkers or tack or one of the other abstract type games, anything in the Yinch series that you can play, and this one plays with younger players or less experienced players without any big deal. The rules are really easy to follow. Next, we have my copy of Pandemic Legacy. We haven't finished this yet. That makes me very sad. We are about halfway through it. However, our roommate who lived with us in Kentucky is not going to be joining us in Oregon, most likely. And so I don't know when or if we're going to finish it. We probably will. We'll probably just, like, proxy that third player to get through it. But I don't know exactly when that will happen. Probably weekends, date nights, and sometime after my son goes to sleep. My wife and I will be able to finish it, but we both really like it. Pandemic, as I said, was one of the games that pulled me back into the hobby nearly immediately, and my wife really enjoys it. It's a co-op game. She really enjoys co-op games. We really make a good team, both in real life and in board games, and so it was just kind of a no-brainer for us to have that. Here's a game of my wife's, Old Bachelor. It's a 90s version of Old Maid. It uses the same rules as Old Maid, except there's just one Bachelor instead of one Old Maid. Don't end up with the Old Bachelor. That's basically the name of the game. We just kept it because it's fairly unique and the artwork is really, really cool. Let's see what else. We've got a Mancala board, because everybody should have a Mancala board if they're at all interested in original games from around the world or abstract games. Mancala is a really good one that, again, plays with pretty much everybody, so that's a neat one to have. I highly recommend it. Let me see here. I had one of the government jobs that I had in the past. I worked with a lot of people out of Africa, and Mancala is a game that they were very, very familiar with, and we could talk about and play and relate to. And it was really cool that they thought it was really cool that I was familiar with a game that they have as a cultural touchstone where they're from. So, yeah, I really like Mancala. My wife crushes me at it. She's very, very good, but we have one. Then I have Nightmare Chess and Nightmare Chess 2 from Steve Jackson Games. These were my first exposure to Steve Jackson Games, not Munchkin, like some people. I was on the chess team in high school, and I was not very good. I hated memorizing openings. To me, it seemed like that defeated the point of chess. I was no longer out-thinking my opponents. I was out-memorizing them, and that really kind of turned me off to the game as a whole. But Nightmare Chess kept me in the chess club long after I would have quit otherwise, because being able to play riposte and steal the piece of the person who was trying to steal my piece instead of the other way around was one of the most satisfying things on earth. and gave me the ability to actually win some games of chess against those against the people who didn't mind memorizing all of the openings and playing openings opposite each other. It was never really my kind of game, but Nightmare Chess breathed a lot of extra life into chess. I still love to play chess, but I don't love to play competitive chess. I love to play chess with people who, I don't want to say don't know how to play chess, like, they don't know what a horsey does. That's not who I'm looking for. I'm looking for people who know how everything moves, but aren't competitive chess players who've memorized openings, who know all the, major ways to play the game, or who've played it competitively themselves, and have ELO rankings and all of that stuff. Not really interested in playing with those people, but I like playing chess. So, yeah, Nightmare Chess. I also happen to have our ultra fancy chess pieces in here. They're all brass, I think. Brass chess pieces. And some of them are very yellow, and some of them are a slightly different color, but they're two different armies of chess pieces that are really fancy, and I really like them. We got those in a sale, Wizards of the Coast going out of business sale, for like a tenth of their price. So it's a really fancy chess set that we have. And I'm glad, because I do like chess. And it's really fun to play Nightmare Chess with really fancy chess pieces. We have a copy of Uno. We have a copy of Rook. We have a copy of Wizard. I like little card games. Cards with number games are really fun. And I grew up playing a lot of these kinds of games. First card game I ever really learned was Crazy Eights from my grandmother, and we played Crazy Eights until I got bored, which meant it was probably long after she was bored, but she was a fantastic sport about things and didn't cause me any issues there. But yeah, I love numbers on cards games. We have several different illustrated card decks. There's a Naruto one. Just decks of regular cards sitting around, fancy and not fancy, for various reasons. The next game is a game that my wife bought me, so that I could play it with my son at some point, hopefully very soon, and that's the Magic Labyrinth. Magic Labyrinth, for those who don't know, is a very neat game in that there are basically magnet walls that form a maze, but the playing surface of the board covers the maze, and you don't know where they are, and you're trying to navigate your pieces through the labyrinth that you can't see. It's created entirely of magnets. It's a Kinderspiel de Jar winner in 2009. It's a really, really cool game. It's a game that was highly recommended to me based on just other parents who were gamers, so that this was a game that they really liked playing with their kids, and I mentioned it offhand, and my wife saw it on sale and just picked it up for me. As you can see, it's still in shrink. We haven't even opened it yet. But we got this one just before we moved, so it went into the box that I was packing as I was packing it, still in shrink wrap. And last but not least in here is what I have left of my Game of Thrones collection. Game of Thrones CCG, that is. It's got several autographed cards autographed by Eric Lang, cards autographed by George R. R. Martin, cards autographed by Christian Peterson. The wooden box here was hand-constructed for me by a gentleman who went by Mad Castle on the old Game of Thrones forums before Fantasy Flight switched their forum software out. And George R. R. Martin actually signed the top of it, which is really funny. I went to a major tournament called the Trials of the Mad King in Madison, Wisconsin. Mad Castle is from Madison, Wisconsin, and was kind of the older Robert Baratheon-esque character of the group. I played Baratheon, and we all went to this tournament, and George R. R. Martin was in town signing A Feast for Crows, which had recently been released. And so we went and saw George R. R. Martin live, do a reading, and then we pestered him for autographs. There was no limit to the number of times you could go through the line, but you could only get 3 things signed at once. So we went through the line, I think, 4 times until finally George was just like, if you have anything you want me to sign, just put it in front of me, and we'll get it out of the way, because you guys are obviously really big fans. So I just set this down on the table in order to be able to dig other stuff out of my bag, and while I was doing that, he signed to the top of my box. So this wooden collectible box here keeps all of my major things from the game, all of my promo decks and stuff, like the Wildlings deck and the Varys deck that existed, and then all of my stone house cards that Fantasy Flight used to use as promotional items, both the old and new Baratheon. I also have I also have a Stark and a Lannister here, a Lannister one, and a Greyjoy. Here you can see the shiny squid a little if you look really close. But yeah, those were the house cards. They just replaced a cardboard card in there where you kept your power counter so that people knew how much power you had, how close you were to victory. I also won these tokens, which were handmade. We all used to use glass blobs for power counters before the fancy LCG sets came out, and I won this in a tournament. I made it to the final rounds, and you can't see it, but it's Melisandre from the card, the newest version of Melisandre that was out at the time. They basically printed out a whole bunch of them and then glued them onto the bottom of glass blobs and felted the bottom and everything and put them in this nice lace bag. So I had my own Melisandre counters. I played Baratheon. I played primarily Stannis. I was the super crazy a shy deck guy most of the time. When I wasn't playing Renly Rainbow Guard with all of the knights and jousting themes inside, Knight of Flowers was my homeboy. I played the game pretty religiously for almost 2 years straight. Bought thousands and thousands of dollars worth of CCG cards, but this is all I've kept of it as a memory and a memento of that time in my life, and it's got a lot of cool stuff in it that I'm always going to kind of cherish. So this one isn't a game that I play anymore, it's just really a keepsake from one of the other gaming parts of my life. And that's it. We're empty with box 20. We've only got 2 more boxes to go, and both of them are back to small box size. So we'll be wrapping this up here in the next couple days. Bearded Rogue, signing out.